When the Royal Australian Air Force first rolled out the F-35 Lightning II, it was celebrated as the crown jewel of Australian defence modernisation, a sleek emblem of national pride, technology, and alliance cooperation. But behind the official speeches and glossy footage of stealth jets cutting through the sky lay a story that would eventually shake public trust in the country's defence establishment. By 2025, investigative journalists had uncovered a quiet pattern of shipments, dozens of F-35 components leaving Australia, bound directly for Israel, even as war raged in Gaza. What began as a proud symbol of partnership had evolved into a shadow network linking Australian industry to an active conflict zone. Between October 2023 and September 2025, at least 68 separate shipments of F-35 parts departed Australia for Israel. Instead of traveling through US or Dutch logistics hubs, the usual checkpoints in the F-35's global supply chain, these consignments took a shortcut straight from Australia to Israel via commercial airliners. Records reveal a strikingly routine route. Components left RAAF Williamtown by truck, reached Sydney, and were loaded onto Thai Airways TG472 to Bangkok, then transferred to El Al flights to Tel Aviv. In one documented case from mid-September 2025, an inlet lube plate, part of the F-35's thermal management system, followed this path before arriving at Israel's Nevatim airbase, home to the country's F-35 squadrons. The timing was no coincidence. The first shipments began only weeks after Israel's renewed offensive in Gaza in late 2023, and the pace accelerated sharply as the conflict deepened. Declassified Australia and the ABC reported that in November 2023 alone, 10 shipments left Australian soil. Yet for nearly 2 years, the transfers attracted no public scrutiny. There were no headlines, no government briefings, only routine customs entries and vague documentation. When the story finally broke, the secrecy surrounding the deliveries became the most damning detail. Canberra had repeatedly told Parliament and the press that no weapons or military material were being exported to Israel during the conflict. But the export logs contradicted those denials. Officials insisted the F-35 components were non-lethal and formed part of the aircraft's global supply chain, administered by Lockheed Martin and the U.S. Department of Defense. According to the government's argument, the shipments were standard industrial obligations, possibly even repairs, and therefore not evidence of complicity. Yet the explanation collapsed under basic logic. If these parts were truly for maintenance or refurbishment, why send them to a country actively deploying F-35s in combat, instead of to an American or European depot? Moreover, the parts in question, actuators, visor interfaces, thermal plates, were precisely the kind used to keep aircraft operational. The classification of such hardware as non-lethal sounded less like accuracy and more like political self-protection.
There are serious
adding to suspicion. In late 2023, the Department of Defense quietly deleted its F-35 industry participation webpage, a site that had long listed Australian companies involved in the program. No public notice was issued. When questioned, officials simply replied that the page was under review. The timing coincided almost perfectly with the start of the Gaza conflict. Parliamentary hearings later revealed that officials had fielded questions about shipments labeled with specific flight codes, such as TG472 and LY82. Their responses were evasive. They did not deny the flights carried F-35 parts, but maintained that those components were under U.S. ownership and thus beyond Australian jurisdiction. The government's reliance on technicalities has only amplified the ethical fallout. The F-35 is not a civilian product. It is one of the most advanced strike fighters in the world, explicitly designed for combat. If parts manufactured or exported from Australia are enabling those aircraft to operate in a war where civilian deaths have drawn global condemnation, then Canberra's insistence on neutrality becomes hollow. Under the Arms Trade Treaty, to which Australia is a signatory, governments must block exports that could facilitate violations of international law. To claim ignorance, or to hide behind the complexity of a shared supply chain, is not an exemption, it is an abdication of responsibility. Beyond legality, the revelations cut to the heart of Australia's self-image. The country often portrays itself as a champion of democratic values and humanitarian norms. Yet this episode paints a picture of a government comfortable with secrecy when morality becomes inconvenient. Domestically, the affair has shaken public trust in defense transparency. Internationally, It threatens to erode Canberra credibility with partners who expect consistency between rhetoric and action. The risks are not only ethical. Using commercial passenger flights to transport sensitive military parts exposes civilians to unnecessary danger. If a shipment were intercepted, sabotaged, or targeted, the consequences could be catastrophic. More broadly, bypassing the F-35's established logistics hubs undermines traceability. The ability to monitor where parts go and how they are used. That oversight gap creates fertile ground for misdirection, leaks, and strategic manipulation, the very risks export laws are meant to prevent. This controversy also lays bare the paradox of modern defense manufacturing. The F-35 program was meant to unite allies under a single industrial framework. It succeeded, but at a cost. When production is spread across thousands of suppliers and dozens of nations, accountability dissolves. Each country builds a small piece of the whole. And when the finished product is used in war, no one can clearly say who is responsible. Australia, once proud of its contribution to the world's most advanced fighter, now finds that contribution tethered to civilian casualties in Gaza. In the globalized defense economy, everyone owns a fraction of the plane, but no one owns the consequences. The political reverberations are still unfolding. Lawmakers from across the spectrum are calling for an independent inquiry into whether export control laws were violated or circumvented. Advocacy groups demand that the Defense Department restore the deleted supplier data and publish a full list of the exported parts. Some experts urge new legislation requiring real-time monitoring of all defense exports, with automatic suspension for destinations in active conflict zones. So far, the government has resisted such reforms, maintaining that all actions were consistent with international obligations and overseen by allied partners. But each new leak, every invoice or flight manifest that surfaces, chips away at that defense. The broader implications reach beyond Australia. If one country can quietly ship critical components to an active war zone under the banner of a shared supply chain, what prevents others from doing the same? The F-35's international network, once a symbol of allied unity, risks becoming a convenient mechanism for evading political accountability. The distinction between lethal and non-lethal parts becomes meaningless when every bolt and actuator contributes to the jet's ability to fight. Ultimately, this scandal forces Australia to confront its uneasy dual role, as both a loyal participant in the US-led defense architecture and an independent state that claims to uphold humanitarian law. Those two identities are now colliding. Canberra can no longer hide behind contractual obligations or semantic distinctions. The public has seen how easily alliance cooperation can blur into complicity. A country cannot claim innocence when its stamped metal, made in Australia, becomes part of a machine dropping bombs on a besieged city. In the months ahead, several outcomes seem likely. Parliament may launch a bipartisan investigation demanding full disclosure of export licenses and communications with Lockheed Martin. Human rights organizations may escalate the issue internationally, arguing that Australia breached its treaty commitments. And within the defense industry, firms tied to the F-35 project may quietly reevaluate their exposure, aware that association with these shipments could tarnish reputations built over decades. The deeper lesson, though, is not limited to one program or one conflict. It is about accountability in an interconnected world, where modern wars are powered not just by armies but by vast supply chains linking engineers, financiers, and governments across continents. When Australian components find their way into aircraft conducting bombing runs over Gaza, distance offers no moral shield. It only hides responsibility behind layers of logistics and legalese. The secret F-35 mission is, in truth, a reflection of how democracies can lose sight of their own values when economic and strategic interests intertwine. 68 shipments carried discreetly on commercial flights reveal how fragile transparency has become in matters of war. Unless Australia confronts this openly, through investigation, reform, and candor, its story with the F-35 will not just be one of stealth in the skies, but of stealth in politics, accountability, and truth itself.